Welcome to Crime Most French, a weekly podcast taking you through intriguing cases carried out on French soil. Researched and narrated by Cedric and rudely interrupted by me, Melanie. We're the true crime podcast All the Lions. Crack open le vin and let the mayhem commence.
The case this week takes us to a village just down the road from us called Bresdon. It's only a few kilometers down the main road.
And it's where I get my hair cut.
Yes. It takes place on the 21st of May 1936. And on that morning, the body of Albert Bodit was found in a field near the village.
So
he was dead.
The body of Bodit.
The body of Bodit, yes. Yeah. Albert Bodit was born on the 10th of September 1901 in Bresdon, so he was born and bred in the same village.
Wow, it's pretty typical, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not travelers around here. 4 years before the story, he bought and settled in a farm on the outskirts of the village with his wife of 12 years and his 10-year-old daughter. He's known to be serious, hardworking, helpful. He stayed out of trouble his whole life. He works his farm relentlessly, according to neighbors, sometimes with the help of his father and his father-in-law, both of whom also live in the village, and nobody has anything bad to say about him. Nothing would make anyone expect that he was going to be found shot dead in a field one morning. That is until he crossed the path of Jean Lagarde, a 30-year-old farmer, one of his neighbors, who was also born and bred in Bresdon.
Okay. Local farming rivalry,
I guess. So what happened on Thursday morning, on the 21st of May 1936, Albert got up early as usual. His farm needed attended to. On that morning, he told his wife that he first needed to go and get some grass for the rabbits.
Okay.
So after a quick breakfast, set out with his wheelbarrow to one of his fields about 200 meters down the road.
Right.
But time passed, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and he wasn't coming back. So his wife started to be worried. Eventually, having dismissed the idea that her husband would be chatting with a neighbor at 6 a.m, she decided to go and look for him. She went to the field where she knew he went, and she found the wheelbarrow first. It was on the side of the field. It was full of grass, but no trace of Albert.
Oh dear.
She called and nobody answered. So she started searching the area, and she eventually found him. He was lying in the field, his head in a puddle of blood. She bent down and called him, but he didn't answer. He was dead.
Oh dear.
She panicked. She ran back towards the village, shouting that her husband was dead. And she went to a neighbor's house and screamed that her husband had been murdered. She had no doubt about that.
That must have been quite a wake-up call.
Yes. And it's a countryside, so they know what a dead thing looks like. So
yes.
She had no doubt he was dead. There was no doubt about that. And she knew who did it. She said It was Jean Lagarde. It could only be him.
Okay.
In the meantime, a young boy took his bicycle to alert the authorities. Not too long later, the gendarmerie from Saint-Jean-d'Angély and Lieutenant Mignot turned up at the scene.
Poor boy had to cycle all the way to Saint-Jean.
He had to cycle about 30 kilometers, yes, to Saint-Jean. Yes.
That's quite a cycle.
It's flat, so it's not too bad. But yes, it's a good ride. But then at the time, they would do that very easily. When I scanned local stories from the village, some people who were interviewed for the book were saying that they don't understand why kids don't walk anymore, because it was fairly common for them when the market at Rouillac every last Thursday of the month was on, that they would walk from here to Rouillac, which is about 30 kilometers on foot. They would do the trip in the day, so they would leave early in the morning and go back at night with whatever they bought in the market. So 25, 26 kilometer bicycle ride.
Nothing. Yeah, I guess so. Different times. But
that was their main way of going around, so they would be well used to it.
Rouillac are very typical. What you imagine a French rural market would be. You can basically buy everything from a cow all the way down to
furniture.
Yeah, exactly. Everything across the board.
Yes, and it's once a month. Last Thursday. So the gendarme turned up. They looked around the body, noticed how things were around the body, and inquired in the village who could have done that. And the inhabitants were unanimous. It was Lagarde.
That must be quite unusual for door-to-door inquiries to yield a result quite that fast.
Yes. Yeah, everybody said it could only be him. So that was easy. Case solved. And indeed, for a while, Lagarde had been talking at the bar when he was a bit drunk about how he was going to take care of Albert one of those days. Nobody knows why he hated Albert so much. They had no business dealings. Neither of them was rich. They never had any women issue. They barely had any contact all their life. They were just vague neighbors.
Okay.
But for some reason, Lagarde absolutely hated Albert. One neighbor that the gendarmerie interviewed remembered seeing Lagarde before 7 a.m. on his way back home. That was 15-20 minutes after Albert has left his house to go and get the grass for the rabbits. The witness doesn't remember if Lagarde was armed, but everybody warned the gendarmes, be very careful. He has 2 large shotguns in his house and they're always loaded.
Wow.
So the gendarmes, having really only one suspect, they go to his house, they knock at the door, and nothing happens. Nobody answers. Both doors, the one opening on the road and the one opening on the courtyard, are locked from the inside. It's fairly uncommon. The tradition around here in villages is to open your gate in the morning, leave it open all day so people can come in and see you, and then close it at night.
Yeah.
We even had a neighbor who was for a while the mayor in where we used to live, who refused to have a mailbox because he wanted the postie to come into his house every day to give him his mail.
Yes.
That was the tradition. So the fact that every door was locked was unusual.
And the farmhouses here are, it's almost like they're fortressed.
They're surrounded by walls, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
everything's walled.
Yeah, they're very large walls, very, very large doors, obviously to get the farming equipment in and out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's like a mini fort. Almost.
Yeah, when you walk down the streets, you're surrounded by walls up to 2 to 3 meters. Every road, every house is like that, yes. That's just the way they did their houses here.
Yeah.
And also because they're houses on the Charente model, they're normally open only on one side.
Yes, yeah, like ours.
Like ours, but ours is unusual because it turns it back to the road. Normally they face the road, like my great-grandparents' one. They normally open on the road.
Yeah, that's very
And it's
true.
the back, which is on the courtyard, which is not open. But ours is weird because it turns it back to the road, so there's no opening on the road from our house.
Antisocial house for antisocial people, eh?
Yeah. So the gendarmes call and they get no answer. So they decide to wait for the judges from the tribunal in Saintes that they had called earlier.
Okay.
It was a prosecutor and an instructing judge that they had called, because in France we have 3 kinds of judges. You have the instructing judge that works with the gendarme or the police to run a case. That is then transferred to the prosecuting judge, which is the equivalent of the prosecutor in the US. The instructing judge is equivalent to a DA. And then you have the judge during the trial, which judges and passes sentence. Yeah. So we have 3 different kinds of judges.
Yeah, I guess the equivalent in the UK of this kind of judge would be a procurator fiscal in Scotland and perhaps the Crown Prosecution Service in England. Because despite being on the same island, the laws are very, very different.
The prosecuting and instructing judges arrive early afternoon, and they bring with them a doctor that is going to do a quick autopsy of Albert.
Okay.
And the doctor informs them that he thinks that Albert was shot in the head at short range with a hunting rifle.
Okay.
Which doesn't rule out anybody at all in the village.
The whole village is now suspected because everybody has a hunting gun.
Yeah. So at least we know how he died, but it doesn't help the inquiry.
No.
The gendarmes need a plan. They know that Lagarde is in his house. They suspect he's in there with his wife and 5 kids, but nobody has seen them during the day at all.
Okay. So they're holed up then.
Yeah. And they don't want to risk a bloodbath because that would not be good, a bloodbath with 5 kids in the middle.
No.
So they decide to wait. They hope that Lagarde would run out of food and drink eventually.
Yeah, good luck with that.
But they forgot it's the countryside. So they obviously came from the city or from a different place in the country. I don't know. Their gendarmerie is the army, so they tend to move around a lot.
Yeah.
So a few of them would be locals. But yeah, they obviously didn't know that here people have food for months in their houses and still do. They now have massive freezers full of food, half pigs, whatever.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So waiting for somebody to run out of food is not a good strategy. You're going to be there until the winter.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when we visited Cedric's aunt and uncle for the first time. He was proudly shown half a boar in the fridge, in the fridge freezer that was downstairs. I mean, it was, in fact, no, it wasn't even a fridge freezer. It was a big chest freezer with like half an animal in it.
Yeah, my grandparents used to have 2 of those in the garage, but they stopped using them because my grandmother couldn't reach anymore. And
she fell in.
She could fall in. So they switched to like a cupboard-style freezer. But
safer.
they had those big, massive chests for most of what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And they were always full of food. There was months and months of food in these freezers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that strategy was not a good idea. So it didn't go anywhere. Then they decided that they didn't really want Lagarde to escape. So there's about 3 armed gendarmes that turned up.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's the army, they were properly armed, not with hunting rifles. It was
how many did you say?
War rifles, 30
30.
gendarmes.
Okay, yeah. Wow, that's heavy duty.
Yes, so they surrounded the farm. They wanted to be sure that he wouldn't go anywhere, and they were instructed to shoot on sight. So if he left, he would be shot. They then put a ladder against the wall in a neighbor's yard, and they wanted to see what was happening in the house. And several times, Lagarde opened his kitchen door, looked at the gendarme, smiled, and went back in.
Okay.
So he wasn't worried.
No.
Both the prosecutor and the head gendarme at the time went up to the ladder and tried to negotiate with Lagarde, but he just ignored them. He wasn't interested in that.
It gives us very difficult to get a good dialogue going when you're on top of a ladder.
Yes, but that's all they could do because, as we said,
it's like
all
fortress.
The farms are usually surrounded by walls. So they need to find a better course of action that doesn't involve attacking the farm, because they think that even with tear gas, there would be dead children after an attack. So they need something better.
So that was ruled out, yeah.
Yeah. Having seen the youngest of the kids, who was 14 months old at the time, crawl on the kitchen floor, crying, they call Lagarde and advise him to surrender to save his kids. Lagarde starts talking with the gendarmes.
Okay.
He asks them what they want, and they tell him that they just want to take him to the gendarmerie barracks in Saint-Jean-d'Angers and ask him a few questions.
Okay.
He accepts. Everybody was surprised.
Yeah.
But only the next day, because on that day he still had cows to attend to.
Oh, well, of course.
Oh, he had a farm.
Yeah, it's 365 days.
Yeah. But the gendarmes don't want to wait another day. So they try to be a bit more clever. They tell him that they want to make sure that everybody is safe in the house. And they ask him to call his wife and kids to the courtyard.
Okay.
To which he said, yeah, he can do that if they give him a cigarette. So
he did that all for a fag.
Yeah, he did it for a fag. So at 3:15 p.m., Lagarde and his family come out of the house, as agreed, to the courtyard. And as he tries to grab the cigarette the gendarmes are handing him, they hear a loud noise coming from the house. And it's the gendarme who just broke the front door, and they rush Lagarde. And he's totally surprised. He doesn't have time to react. And he's handcuffed before he does anything.
He's in the courtyard in between the 2 doors.
Yes, he's in his courtyard, with his family. Everybody's out. So the judges interrogate Lagarde on site for about half an hour. And they ask him, why did he kill Albert? And he answered that Albert wanted to stab him with his farm fork. And the judges disagree because they've heard about him.
And he's a solid dude.
They know that Albert has never threatened anyone.
No.
Then Lagarde rolls his eyes and says, then I don't know. That was his explanation for killing his neighbor.
No, he had one crap excuse, and once that was dismissed, that was it. That was all he had.
Yeah, exactly. That didn't work, so his wife is also under suspicion for a while of complicity because they don't really know how she was involved, so they take the 5 kids away.
Oh, that's sad.
Yes, and I don't know what happened to them.
No.
The inquiry starts at that point. As you can expect, when Lagarde is transported to the police station or to the army barracks, he needs to be protected from the crowd by the gendarmerie because having killed his neighbor is pretty much the only thing he could do to be even worsely seen by his neighbours, to have a worse reputation. Like,
how to make yourself more unpopular.
When you threatened everybody, when you have shown that you were dangerous and violent, that's really the only next step. You need to kill someone. So he's done that. But the crowd wants to do justice itself. They don't want to wait for a trial.
No.
So they have to protect him. So what really happened? Why did Lagarde kill Albert on that morning? The judges are puzzled for a long time.
Yeah,
it takes a long while for them to start connecting dots that nobody had seen. At first, Lagarde explains that he and Albert got into an argument and they ended up fighting. And Lagarde says that he hit Albert a few times and he fell on the ground. And he says he only shot Albert because he doesn't want Albert to try to get revenge. But that's rubbish.
Yeah, it sounds nonsense.
The gendarmes don't believe him for a second. Also, his behavior doesn't really match his story.
No.
Why would he have barricaded himself in his house before the gendarmes were even called if he was innocent?
Yeah.
If it was really self-defense, why are you trying to protect yourself behind your wall?
Just make yourself look even more guilty.
Exactly. His story didn't fly.
No.
So he eventually confesses. And that's when the gendarmes learned that the story really started in April of the same year, so a month earlier also.
Okay.
An anonymous letter was received by the tribunal in Saintes, and it alleged that Jean Lagarde mistreated his 5 kids and wife.
Oh dear.
Lagarde has long been looked at by the village as the crazy dude who was violent, who would threaten anybody and say that he was going to kill anyone who disagrees with him. He probably hit people on a regular basis. He had weapons that he was happy to show people. His reputation really wasn't helping him.
No. It kind of... time has moved slowly in this corner of the Charente because it totally sounds like our mayor. Right?
Yeah.
And somebody like that would be mayor, but there you go.
Yeah. He's also known for being totally allergic to work. Not a person you want as a neighbor.
No.
So it's not entirely surprising that somebody said that he mistreated his kids. When the authorities inquired into these allegations, they discovered his reputation. They discovered a few stories that the neighbors said. And as a result, the judge decided to strip him from his right towards his kids.
Okay.
But of course, they left the kids with the wife. And he lived in the same house as the wife. So really, that did
changed.
nothing. No, nothing changed. Officially, he has no right over his kids. He can't see them if he wants to. He doesn't have any authority over them. But really, that made no change because he's still there.
No, but I guess in his eyes, he's lost face.
Yes, exactly. So what does Albert have to do with that?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that he was one of the witnesses who testified to Lagarde's character at the hearing.
Okay.
And of course, Lagarde knew. So that's why Lagarde decided that he needed to get rid of Albert. It was revenge for that testimony. So on the 21st of May, Lagarde got up much, much earlier than he normally does because he's allergic to work. He normally struggles to get out of bed in the morning, but on that day at 5 a.m. he was up.
It's very strange for a farmer because farmers are normally up super early.
Yeah, but farmers who try to work, and he was trying not to, so he was probably not the best farmer. So as soon as he's up, he hides in the shadows and waits for his neighbor to come out of his house. He has his hunting rifle with him. And when Albert goes to his field to get grass for his rabbits, Lagarde follows him, hiding behind the hedges.
Okay.
Here, hedges are very tall.
Yes.
They're called palisse or palissade. They're like the height of a house. So there's essentially very bushy trees.
Yes.
It's not a small hedge at like knee high.
No.
So it's easy to hide behind.
I mean, you get stuff like cherry trees, walnut trees, intermittent with the... I mean, it's a huge... You could almost stand on someone's shoulders behind it.
Yes. Oh, some of them, easily. Some of them are the height of the house. Yeah, so he follows Albert, hiding behind the hedges, and when Albert is finished collecting his grass, he could have shot him.
Yeah.
But he decided he wanted Albert to know. So he came out of hiding,
Yep.
crossed the road, walked towards Albert, and a few meters away, shot him in the head.
Total revenge.
Total revenge.
Last face he sees.
Yeah. was Lagarde.
Yeah.
So the affair goes to trial.
Not surprising.
Because Pete essentially admitted that he had killed Albert. So he's first examined by doctors to decide if he's mentally and physically fit for trial, and the doctors say, "Yep, no problem."
He's unpleasant, but he's not mad.
He's unpleasant, but not mad. Yeah. So the trial starts on the 21st of October, 1936. At first, the trial room is empty, but then word got round. So by the afternoon, it was totally packed. People were walking on each other. It was very, very busy. And Lagarde has changed, or tried to. He no longer is the dirty farmer he was. He's not even the prisoner he was, the one that tried to escape by biting a prison guard.
Wow.
He's clean, he's wearing a suit, he's closely shaved, he's trying to give a good image. Shortly before the trial, he changed his strategy. So up to that point, his defense was Albert attacked him and he only defended himself and tried to save his life from Albert.
Okay, which was weak at best.
It was weak at best, yes. But as the trial approached, he decided to change the strategy.
Okay.
He decided to deny everything. He seems to have thought that saying that he doesn't remember anything, wasn't there, was a better defense than saying he was attacked by Albert and defended his own life.
Okay, so denial is the best form of attack, is it?
Apparently he thought that. Also, even though he tried to change, he can't help himself. So he can't just answer yes and no to the questions that the judge and the lawyers ask him. He first tries to deny anything by saying that he doesn't remember. So he doesn't remember being in the field. He doesn't remember getting up in that morning. He doesn't remember shooting Albert. So he doesn't remember killing him. So he always answers, I don't know, don't remember, though it wasn't there. But he can't help himself. So as time goes by, he starts answering questions with rants. One of them is that he had a beef with Albert because at some point Albert miscounted liters of milk for some reason.
Okay.
He also mentions a whole bunch of petty quarrels with his neighbors. And he gets lost in those stories that last forever and are totally irrelevant. He just can't help himself. Everything at that point seems to have been more important than killing Albert.
Yeah.
So saying that Albert somehow stole a few liters of milk from him is more important than the fact that he actually killed him.
Well, he's obviously a bad man. What a thief. He stole some milk from me. Yeah.
Exactly. That's his thinking at the time. And of course, all that does is turn everybody, the jury, the room, everybody against him because he looks more and more nasty.
Yeah.
And it gets even worse when the witnesses come because then he gets belligerent with the witnesses. And a few of them, he said, well, come out with me outside, we're going to sort it out. So he's now threatening
that's no good strategy
to fight with the witnesses. He also, when Albert's wife comes and testifies, he tries to say that he was the victim, that it's Albert and his wife that were in fact the bad guys in that story. And of course that doesn't work.
No,
it looks
of course
ridiculous.
It doesn't, no.
So of course, unsurprisingly, the prosecutor requests death penalty.
Off with his head.
Yeah, that was the thing at the time. And his lawyer works really, really hard. He tries to convince the jury that it wasn't entirely Lagarde's fault because he had a very hard childhood. He had a bad lineage. His family was all like that. That the loss of his parental rights just drove him mad, and that's what explained the murder.
I see. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Essentially, yes, but not everything is his fault. And also, he tries to play on the abolitionists' sentiment at the time against the death penalty. We've mentioned several times that there was even a bill in the parliament to abolish the death penalty at around 1907, 1908. And he nearly managed to get what he wanted. Okay. Everybody's listening. Nobody's interrupting. Apparently, the room was totally quiet. But the jury, after 20 minutes, decided that Lagarde was guilty.
Okay.
So the judge at that point had no choice and sentenced him to death.
Oh, dear. Okay.
And also the judge, because he didn't want to waste more time, said you have 3 days to appeal.
That's
which is
fast.
very, very short.
Yes.
I don't know how he could do that, but apparently he could. So that was it. That's the end of the trial, and he was convicted and sentenced to death. I found in later newspapers, local newspapers, that in February 1937, so a few months later, because we're in October here, so 4 months later, 5 months later, he was pardoned by the president of the Republic at the time, called Lebrun. And I don't really know what it means, because that's what the newspapers called it, but it's not what it's called now. There's no pardon. There's no such thing here. You can't make somebody who's guilty innocent, not like in the US, for example. So there would be no Trump system where all his cronies would be pardoned. It can't be done here. It doesn't happen. So what you can do now is commute the sentence.
So it was commuted from death.
It most likely commuted to hard labor or prison, but I couldn't find any details because the newspaper said pardoned.
Yeah.
And which makes no sense. Whereas now really he could be freed, but still guilty. He could have his sentence commuted to shorter sentences or different sentences, but always guilty because he was found guilty. You can't change that. So, but the newspaper called it pardon, so maybe pardon was a thing at the time. I don't know. But that's it.
That's it. That's the story of Bresdon, just down the road.
Yeah, and there are still people in Bresdon called Lagarde and still people called Bodit in Bresdon.
Yeah.
So the two families still exist. And I wonder if they know about that story.
Oh, I don't know. Let's not go poking that hornet's nest, I think. And anyway, I think the moral of the story is definitely you need more than a clean suit to help keep you out of trouble.